good to be here today. My sense, I was coming with a lot of stress from work, and when I came into this place, I knew you were good for the soul. The music's been great. The affection that I can see that you hold for each other is amazing, and the faithfulness that's being demonstrated through your presence here, but also through all of the work that you're sharing and talking about. I'm filled up. I go back to my role, filled up. So what is that role? I work at the General Counsel Office. I am the Executive Minister for Organizational Development and Strategy, which I think tells you pretty well nothing. So I usually break it down this way. I work with a really great team of staff, the Communications Department, the Research and Development Department, the Growth Department, and you've been introduced to one of those dynamic staff people in Tori, and also Ministries in French. And so that group of us, there's about 40, we are referred to lovingly as the odds. We are a bit of an odd group, but we serve at the General Counsel Office in that sense of at least one of the things that all of us have in common is the work of kind of turning the church outward and turning the General Counsel Office outward to the broader church, but to the broader world as well. And we've been really intentional about that in the last little while. I came to the General Counsel Office at the invitation of the General Secretary, Michael Blair, to help work on a strategic plan, and then I stayed. So happy to continue to serve the church in this way. My pronouns are she, her. I come from a very long settler roots on Turtle Island, going back to the 1630s. But one of the latecomer groups of my ancestors came to Belleville in about 1850 or so. And so I feel a little bit of a tug and connection of blood memory to this particular part of our beautiful country. I want to say that it's just a delight to be with you in this centennial year when we're in this kind of fulcrum. It's a General Counsel year as well, and we're marking this 100-year legacy, and then we're kind of shifting our energy and gaze to the challenging but hopeful future that we have in front of us. And so I continue the moderator's video greeting with bringing formal greetings from the moderator, Carmen Lansdowne, from the General Secretary, Michael Blair, and the rest of my colleagues at the General Counsel Office. And I bring greetings in the words that the early church used to greet one another, right? Grace and peace to you in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. There's a lot to talk about in terms of the General Counsel, but I thought best to give you kind of the big picture for accountability reasons and just to get the broadest span. So I'm going to offer some highlights from the 2024 strategic plan. This is the second year of our 3-year plan, and it's really connected to this North Star, or maybe we better call it an Epiphany Star that we have, which is our call. So that's my first question for you today, is what is the call of the United Church of Canada? The first word is deep. Deep spirituality, very good. Bold discipleship, yes. Daring justice, thank you. And so we really try to be anchored to that call, to be connected to that call as we move forward. And one of the things that's been beautiful about that call, and it's been translated into as many of the languages that are spoken in the United Church as we possibly can, is that the call has been a way for us to enter into conversation across difference by putting these words, these 6 words, and the gift of 6 words is that we are able to translate them, and there's a fullness in them that can be interpreted multiple ways. So we're able to be in conversation with folks across different relationships and say, what do these words mean to you? Do they resonate? What do they mean to us is there a conversation here about who we could be together that comes out of a reflection on these words? I'm going to talk a little bit about the strategic plan report, as I said, and I'll begin with a video from my boss, Michael Blair, the General Secretary, who will just introduce it a bit.
Greetings. When the General Council of the United Church established our 2023 to 2025 strategic plan, we selected 6 strategic objectives as our guideposts for bringing our vision of a bold, connected, and evolving church to life. We're pleased to present the 2024 strategic plan report, where we share the creative work undertaken nationwide last year to bring us closer to our goals. As you'll read, we have emboldened justice by supporting 2S LGBTQIA+ human rights, invigorated leadership by inspiring the next generation of faith leaders, and we are reducing the operational footprint of the General Council office to nurture the common good of the whole church. We've also deepened our climate integrity by funding green renovations at churches, strengthened the invitation to the church in both new and exciting communities of faith, and as we continue to partner with and support the growth of a self-determining Indigenous church. We are grateful for the Spirit who continues to reorient and blow through our church with winds of transformation. And we give thanks to each of you who have played a part in our ongoing growth and renewal.
That's just one of the resources that you might choose to use if you wanted to talk a little bit about the work of the National Church. It doesn't take long, but it opens up the conversation for people about what exactly does the General Council do. So as Michael said, the plan is anchored in 6 strategic objectives: justice and leadership, common good. And common good there, we're really talking about the common good of the church across the country, deepening climate integrity, strength and invitation, which we sometimes shorthand as growth. That's why it would be long to call Tori and their colleagues the strength and invitation animators, so we shorthand that, and journeying Indigenous pathways. And in the beginning of this process, we made the commitment that strengthening invitation was our highest priority. And if you've seen an earlier graphic, you might see a fish. And at that fish has strengthening invitation right at the front. And that's the beginning, the leading part of this plan. And all the other pieces become a part of that and are how this fish swims forward. And we know it's a bit of a swimming upstream kind of fish because we're working against tides in our society that may not help that move forward. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see that what we're trying to do is really align the resources that we have towards the priorities. And so the revenue, and this in particular case is not just mission and service revenue. This is mission and service and assessment. And actually in this particular graphic, it pulls in some fund centers. So there's some places where the church has put aside money over the years. I think you saw one of them in the mission and service piece, the venture fund. There was money put for property. So we're trying to be responsible and repurpose those resources for what they might be used in this time, even though they were raised in a very different time. So we pull from a resource like that to support something like Faithful Footprints. And so you'll see that this is how the money is being distributed as it relates to our priorities, the operating budget, but then pulling in some of those additional pieces. from the reserves. Next. Thank you. So we track our progress on key results by quarter in each activity stream of our work. What did we plan to accomplish? And then what did we accomplish? And so when we did that for this year, the number for all of the year and all the areas was 78%. So we accomplished 78% of what we planned to do. That's a solid number. There's a real challenge in setting key results. And the challenge is you want to be not overly ambitious, but you want to be ambitious enough. You want to stretch yourselves. I would be concerned if we got 100%, because it really would mean that we're not stretching ourselves in the way we would hope. So we really try to track the progress across. I would note that the Indigenous Pathways part, so that 6th priority, doesn't track the work this way. They report in a narrative manner, and we respect that we are walking different pathways, but we're walking together. So I'll just talk a little bit about those 6 areas and just a bit of a highlight in one or the other of them. Next slide, please. As General Secretary referred to, in this work of emboldening justice, the focus for us is both on the church and transformation in the church, making the church a just place, and also on the world. And one of the pieces of work that is really exciting has been a series of consultations that have been moving across the globe, Latin America, Asia, this year in Africa, on the African continent. And what we're trying to do is come alongside religious leaders in those contexts as they work to transform religious and social understandings about LGBTQ. And this is really courageous work. For them even to show up at this event is a courageous act. And so we really want to come alongside and do everything we can to support. We want to also link that to the work at home, because we know that the context is changing. And if ever there was a sense of greater safety with respect to LGBTQ folks in this part of the world, that may be eroding, right? We may be feeling that retrench. And so we want to connect places where these rights, violations of rights, this is a life or death question, places here where it may also be a life or death question if what we're talking about is whether a young person feels strong enough about themselves, is affirmed in who they are, enough to battle mental health issues, for example, and not to be at risk for suicide in their communities across the country. So we want to link these things, and you'll notice that, go ahead, one more, that there's an action running right now that you can integrate into your Pride celebrations. And so that there's a QR code. I hear you don't love the QR code. If you don't love the QR code, you can go to the main site, the unitedchurch.ca site, and there's basically right off the unitedchurch.ca site, a link to this advocacy action. And it's trying to put the United Church a little bit on the map with this new parliament and say, we care about LGBTQ, we care in Canada, we care around the world. We have some suggestions about how that could better that protection could better be achieved. And so I really would encourage you, we do a lot of celebrating when it comes to Pride, right? There's rainbows, there's balloons, there's all sorts of wonderful, joyful. And in the midst of that joy, if we can offer some resistance, we can offer some advocacy, then I think we strengthen the kinds of events we hold, and we take them a little bit outside our walls. Because at this time and place, affirmation and affirming really means using our outside voice outside of the church walls. So that's it's one little piece of the work under justice, but the work with global partners in the 68 partnerships that Glenn spoke to, that's in that area as well. Going on to leadership, we've had a few conversations about leadership, and this particular project of Regenerate, which is Moderator's project to work intensively with a series of leaders And Ryan, who was here a little bit earlier, is also a part of that. What I think it's important to help folks understand is that this isn't just a program for a group of people. This is a pilot to try and figure out. In fact, these folks were a little bit of guinea pigs as we tried to figure out what exactly are the needs in terms of ministry in this day and time. How do we better meet those? And what's the best way to deliver that support and to help that develop? And so this is a kind of pilot, and we're using it to reshape and reconsider possibilities in ministry support and training across the country to meet the needs of not just this time, but the time to come. But there are other things under leadership. We're funding cooperative ministries through supervised ministry educations that are very specific to experimenting about cooperative ministry. So that's another piece under leadership, and there are many others. Under the common good, as I said, the common good piece is really about levering resources that we have because we're a whole church, because we are a large denomination, towards greater efficiency and effectiveness. So it's really about making whole church decisions that serve the common good of the entire denomination. How many of you participate in the Treasurers webinar? Does anyone check in? Okay. Couple or folks in your church might. So things like the Treasurers webinar are partly in this objective. How can we make sure as a national church that we're equipping our treasurers with what they need to do their jobs in the most effective way? So that would be an example. But another big project under this is the redevelopment of 300 Bloor Street to house the Presbyterians and the United Church and the Anglicans and this is a big and, all the archives. So this is a project that's going forward, and it has a very huge impact for us in terms of scaling down our footprint, and also has a great set of ecological benefits and some possible synergies in terms of ecumenism. We're not necessarily thinking we are one church of all three churches when we move in. We're not quite there, but we're thinking maybe we could be one graphic design program or one IT support or some of those things we could do better together. And I think that would be, again, we need more resources for ministry. The next is in the priority around climate. And one of the things that's exciting there is that Faithful Footprints can offer a certain grant, but what happens sometimes is that it can really lever other grants. And this is a particular example in Transcona where they levered a significant amount of other government money just based on the $30,000 grant they received from Faithful Footprints, and were able to do a huge transformation there. So in terms of the completed projects of Faithful Footprints in congregations to date, we've reduced emissions almost equivalent to the annual energy use of 1,300 homes. So this is huge. We are taking responsibility for our buildings. And this also strengthens our advocacy, because when we can say, we're putting our house in order, we're really trying to take responsibility for our buildings across the country. Government, can you work with us, partner with us? What are you doing, right? And that's happening in this project, but it's also happening in the Kindred Works projects, where we are taking a net zero approach to development. In the Strength and Invitation or growth area, we can see there's many things going on, but if you want to think about what's happening here, you can think about it in 3 words: renew. We are renewing existing communities of faith. We're trying to come along existing communities. That's a lot of the work that Tori was talking about. We're working right now with about 400 communities across the country, close to a quarter of our communities, and we'd just like to increase that. Visioning, invitation plans, new ministry development. A great project that I was really excited to see was in Red Deer, Alberta, where a church that was a bit struggling, Sunnybrook United Church, was able to help launch a campus ministry at Red Deer Polytechnic So new ministry over at Red Deer Polytechnic with First Third, and then Sunnybrook had a new lease on life, really, like to be partners in this. So that was like renew and then create, which is our second piece. We are also helping come alongside 30 emerging communities at this point and looking to support more towards a process of becoming part of the United Church of Canada. And those are different communities. Some of them are uniquely theirs. So it's a Swahili-speaking community, a Hong Kong community. Some of them are those, but they're kind of nestled or accompanied or close to an existing congregation. Some of them are denominations from kind of overseas that are here, but trying to figure out like where do they fit and might being part of the United Church be part. So it's our goal to have these communities become part of the United Church, and we're saying we're putting the hope that within 3 years they might at least make a decision about regionally covenanting. And so we're really excited that these 30 new communities are a part of who we are. And then finally, the invite. So renew, create, invite. That's the work of growth. And invite is that work of trying to go out there and say all the way across the country, you know, there's this United Church, and it may not be the Christianity you have in your mind. It actually might be something a bit different, and it might meet some of the needs that you have in your life, and some of that feeling of wanting community, or some of that sense of being with other people who have a sense of spirituality. And so really trying to remind folks who might know who we are, that we're still here, and welcoming to them. But it also will introduce the United Church to folks who are not aware. So some of you might have seen a piece of public outreach, which is, I talk about it as a piece of public witness, a theological statement we released recently called A Place at the Table. It was a reinterpretation of Da Vinci's Last Supper with a much more contemporary and inclusive version of that table. And in response to that, we've received about 122 pieces of media coverage across the country and 16.2 million impressions. So we're starting to get ourselves in a new way in front of new folks who might be interested, and we think this supports both existing communities of faith, and we think it supports emerging communities of faith. And finally, just the piece on Indigenous pathways. This is the work of the Self-Determining Indigenous Church. Last year, that work was a spiritual gathering where folks came together and elders were identified to lead the church forward. And so that's just one of the pieces under this final pillar. Go ahead forward. I think the pictures here sort of speak to themselves all the way across the plan. It doesn't really matter whether we're talking about justice or we're talking about leadership or we're talking about climate. You'll see exciting youth action going on, and you heard some of that and the participation of some of your regional folks in that. So we are thrilled about this. We're nurturing leadership. We are essentially birthing a cross-strategic objective strategy. And we're discerning now how that youth leadership development connects to what Andrew was talking about, ministry recruitment, for example, and how does it connect to multi-generational congregations? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later today. Just a last couple of words about this plan. You can go one forward. It really is our goal to be more transparent, to be more accountable, to be more measurable, so that we can adjust based on when things aren't working. First of all, we can know it's not working, and second of all, we can adjust based on that, to be more data informed. And we're doing that, and it's a huge culture shift. So we're really trying to have strong planning and implementation, And we're really trying to report and be accountable for the things that we're committed to doing. So one of the ways is through these annual reports. I'm talking to you about it now, but if you're really pumped, you're really excited, there's a quarterly report that actually goes on the website that shows you how we're doing quarter by quarter, that you can have a look at. So to try to tell the church about what it is we've committed to do and how we're doing on that. We also have tied to budget, and so this is really important. These things kind of wandered before in separate universes. Now we're saying, no, how does our budget tell the story of what our priorities are? Well, our priorities tell the story of what our budget is. You might have noticed that in that budget piece, that growth, I said growth's our top priority, and growth wasn't our top priority in the numbers of budget. And so that's the kind of conversation we're having with each other as we continue to look at this, as we pull the budget together with the priorities. So we're doing this, and we're not perfect at it. We're learning. We need to get a lot more focused. We're really good at pulling existing work forward no matter what, no matter what, no matter what. I'm sure that's never happened in your congregations. We have trouble leaving it behind. Well, why are we doing this? Because we did it last year. But why are we doing it? So we're really trying to get more focused, leave behind some existing work, be more strategic so that our activities actually line up to the overall strategy of what we're trying to accomplish. We can answer that why question. Well, why? Because our commitment is to invite more people in the United Church of Canada. Here's the activities that line up to that commitment. And if we can't answer those kinds of things, then we're trying to rethink. And more impact-oriented. One of the things we do is we count. When we start to count, and we start to learn how to do this kind of measurable, we count activities. We count things done. How many bake sales, how many reports written, how many, that kind of thing. What we need to really be counting is more along the lines of impact. And that's a numbers thing, that's also a qualitative thing. Are we making the kinds of transformation that we sought to do? So I put in red those areas that we are still a work in progress on. And if you are experiencing positive impacts from the work that you're doing, and you can give us any tips at the General Council office about how to be more strategic, more focused, and more impact-oriented for the purposes of the gospel, for the purposes of persisting in the good news, then we'd love to hear about that. Finally, I'll just tell you where that whole report is on the website. If you want to find it, there's that QR code, nasty QR code again. But if you just go on the main page, you can go to the strategic plan. Also, there is one of these floating around. Why I tell you this is because if someone asks you in your congregation, what the heck does the General Council do? I'm not sure anybody would ask, or I'm just sending all this money. If that ever happens to you, you might have an opportunity to help them see the report, show them the report. You could even, if you go to that site, you could even get a PowerPoint, just like the one I just did, and you could show them the PowerPoint, or you could show them Michael Blair's video, and that would be a way of having a conversation about what the work, not that the General Council does, but that the General Council does in service of the denomination across the country. And I will end with an invitation, and that is to join us for our centennial celebration. Eric and myself, and I don't know who else from here, Eric and myself will be in person at Gower Street United Church in St. John's to be part of the 100th anniversary celebration in person. But what we want to be very clear about is that it's not just a movie to be watched, later. I mean, if you can't come, it would be great to watch the movie later. But what we would hope for sure is that we would have as many people in real time participate in this worship service as a part of the gathered community coast to coast to coast that we are as the United Church of Canada. So if it's at all possible, and you could be in your back garden with a little Wi-Fi, having an afternoon sip of something, that's fine. But I'd love to see you there, and we could be together as this beautiful and beloved United Church of Canada. And I know that you're doing some wonderful local and regional activities supporting the 100th anniversary, and I wish you the best in those. And I hope that we are like butterflies, kind of bringing the hope and joy from each of those to each other event that we are participating in as we celebrate this church that is God's and ours. Thank you.